All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another episode of. Please silence your cell phone. So,
that would help.
I know everybody else did. I forgot to. Anyway, welcome back to another exciting episode of Listen Up, Santa Paula.
This is a great addition here today.
Look at that, huh? Right above my head. I am producing the show now too.
You're doing everything.
I am doing it all.
That's good.
So, and we have these two lovely mannequins that I put in just to kind of give us. Oh, they move. So I know. So when we come back, did you want to include anything in this little banter, or
No,
just
I
me?
think we're good. We
I'm
want to
doing.
get to our guests.
Okay. All right. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Dan Singer and Jonathan Royas from the city, and boy, do we have questions.
Rough Edge FM, irritatingly irresistible internet radio at roughedgefm.com.
There's so much going on in your community that even in this age of information, it's tough to keep up. This show will help. It's all about what's new, what's happening, and what's out there. So if you're ready, sit back and listen up, Santa Paula.
Okay, I think we're going to need makeup and wardrobe here because Dan, actually your socks blend right into your pants. You can't even tell where the pants and the socks end.
I didn't dress up for you though, James. I have a council meeting tonight.
Oh, I do too, but I stay in the closet.
Yeah.
So anyway, so welcome to the show.
Yeah,
Jonathan is like been ghosting us all this time, and wow, he's. Did you brighten
a couple of months, huh?
A few. Did you brighten your teeth? Did you do the teeth brightening thing? No, you got such a bright smile. He does have a great smile.
Yeah. I had a good orthodontist.
Yeah.
He is starting to get a little bit of gray, so he's.
I did notice that.
Took on his new role.
That's what I've been told.
We're making it count.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Sign of wisdom.
Yeah. At least it's not disappearing though.
Yeah, every gray hair is like a notch in the belt.
Do you ever have that morning though? You wake up and there's a few hairs on the pillow, and you're like,
"Oh,
what kept this in last night?" Now it's gone.
Yeah.
I when I get out of the shower and I look at all the hair that's in the tub, and I'm going, that didn't come from me.
Yeah, you blame that on your wife.
Yeah.
Like,
so
those are too long.
Exactly. So anyways, welcome to the show, and you guys are here to for what purpose?
We have an important ballot measure that's going on the ballot this November, so we are here to share information about that.
And it's strictly the sharing of information, not to push anybody in any direction or the other.
Correct.
Glad you brought that up. We are not here as advocates.
Yes.
We're here on official city business, talking about the measure, talking about what it means, what it would do, but not here to promote it, yes or no.
And why did you pick this show? Is it because we have Santa Paula in the name?
I think it's the only radio show that's have us,
and Santa Paula.
It's the hosts, right?
Yeah, the host with the most.
Well, the key to this measure is the money stays in Santa Paula, so we might as well,
there could be some additional funding coming our way.
There you go.
Yeah.
We push it.
Yeah. I mean, we do, it's all for the city. We do 100% support of the city, and we ask nothing in return.
So far.
Yeah. Exactly.
It always starts that way.
Yeah.
Exactly. We've been doing this, almost 2 years now. Huh?
Yeah, we're up to show number 200 and what episode are we on? 121.
Yeah,
121.
I think you had the mayor for episode 100, right?
We did.
Yeah.
And Carlos, when he was mayor, he was on the show. Yep. His was more of a roast. It really didn't do much informative type stuff, but it was a lot of fun picking on him.
Yeah, it's been fun having the council.
That's the way the show started. It was more of like a roast.
Yeah,
I remember.
Thing.
That's I think why I left.
Yeah, probably.
That's why I didn't ask to be on it.
Yeah.
So
we've grown.
Jonathan is his was a roast, but what he didn't realize though is even though he left, he was still being roasted on the show.
Yeah. Honorary roast.
Part of the show for about 6 months.
Yeah.
You were.
Yeah.
Your name was mentioned every single show. So
in a good way.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
So Measure R. this is something that the residents are going to be able to vote on. And what exactly is Measure R?
The council has been focused for a while on revenue opportunities and how we can really lift the city up, and ultimately decided back in June to place a 1 cent sales tax measure on the ballot in November. It would require a 50% plus one vote to pass. And the intention is to be able to bring in additional revenues to our what we call our general fund. It's like our checking account, in order to realize the opportunity to take care of more of Santa Paula and our myriad of projects and obligations, and trying to lift up the community.
So there's no, so this is a general fund measure. Then it's basically the way the city sees fit as to how to use the funds, but they are doing it for very specific projects, are they not?
The council's very focused on the need to get our roads repaired. It's the number one thing that they hear, that we hear. It's one of the things we've had the greatest trouble keeping up with. Obviously, Harvard Boulevard getting paved was a big plus, but there's still numerous streets that need attention and are every day continuing to deteriorate. So it's really a significant fiscal obligation for us.
How much of the roads have been completed right now? Percentage.
Well, our PCI, the pavement condition index
Yeah.
that we use, the last update that our public works director gave, we moved up to about a 58%, or I guess a 58 percentile, you would call it.
Yeah.
But the goal that we're looking to achieve is to get to 70. And when we started the whole pavement management plan, gosh, this was almost about 5 years ago, we were in the low 40s. So in a short amount of time, we've been able to make significant strides, and that's really due in part to funding from Measure T. But the Measure T funding only gets us so far. And we've heard numerous times earlier this year from our public works director. He's really done a nice job kind of queuing up all the unfunded infrastructure projects that the city looks forward to in the next 5 to 10 years. And we're talking millions of dollars of infrastructure projects that at this point in time, the pavement management plan would, at this point where we're at today, would still take another 15 years to get our roads up to that 70%.
Yeah. And I was talking to somebody and they said, well, doesn't Measure T cover all that stuff? So explain how that's different. That, and Measure T is very specific as far as the percentages of what goes towards what, but in a way, it's really identical to this new measure that's been put on the ballot, because Measure T, also a 1 cent sales and use tax, is available for general use. At the time it was passed, the priorities were very much about public safety and also about roads, and to a lesser extent, youth services. And we've really been able to use Measure T monies not only to add positions to our police, to keep equipment upgraded, and to pay for police services, but then also 30% of that Measure T money every year is going towards that road maintenance plan that Jonathan's talking about. Our Parks and Recreation Department has almost doubled in both its size of employees, but also its ability to provide programming. In fact, they've more than doubled the programming that's available to our citizenry on a annual basis. So in some ways, Measure R would just be a further enhancement of that. The current council is very dedicated to spending it on streets, spending it on infrastructure.
So I know whenever anyone talks about doing a tax increase, there's always, it's like the gasoline tax, where, the state is charging these exorbitant amount of money for gas tax to do the freeway system and the infrastructure and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden they're adding another tax because they need to repair the freeways. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Well, whatever happened to the gas tax that you were, so there tends to be a level of distrust, in the sense that if we do this, where how do we have any guarantees that the money, so what is the city going to do to kind of keep the citizens informed as far as how that money is actually being used and where?
Well, if I might address that, I'm glad you brought that up, James. Earlier, you said when we started this conversation is that the sales tax measure is a general sales tax, and it would go to the general fund. And you mentioned, the city could use those funds for whatever they want. And I think sometimes when people hear the city, a lot of the time they think of the administration and the staff. And one thing that I just wanted to clarify is that, should Measure R pass, similar to Measure T, staff makes recommendations to council, but ultimately at the end of the day, you have 5 council members that ultimately approve the budget, and they approve where those funds go. So again, as we've shared earlier today, council members continue to receive, to this day, we need faster improvement on our roads, in our streets, and in our infrastructure, and our sidewalks. We need, we can't be driving around in potholes. People are expending a lot of money on repairs to their vehicles and their wheels, and it's not well. So when you ask, what is that going to look like in terms of oversight? Well, essentially you have 5 council members that are going to help allocate on a yearly basis through the annual budgeting process where those fundings go. You also currently have a Measure T committee right now that also helps with that.
To give recommendations to
Yeah,
council.
exactly.
based on what's out
And we're going to council in a couple of weeks with a resolution to support a discussion after the election, if the measure does pass, to visit the idea of some type of oversight committee like they did with Measure T. They had a number of, I think 3 different meetings after Measure T passed to really solidify what should that oversight committee look like, how long should citizens serve on it, how many should it be, how often do they meet, what's their scope. And we would anticipate a similar discussion if the measure passes again with Measure R.
I know there's one thing that that kind of struck me at one of the council meetings, because a lot of people would say, why do we need a new tax? We have all this new housing that's going up, which is bringing in, tax revenue on the property. And so the city should be doing better. Why is it also needing to increase its tax? And you had shared something that I don't think many people realize, that the impact that those property taxes are really going to have. So could you explain that as to why we're looking at Measure R?
Sure. The city, when it annexed its fire department, because we had our own fire department up until 2017, to the countywide system, did so in exchange for a large percent of our property taxes, basically 80%, going to the fire department. And so our local share of property taxes decreased significantly as a result. Now we get, guaranteed fire suppression and fire safety services. I think the community is well served with ambulatory calls, fire department calls, with well-trained individuals that have up to the state-of-the-art equipment. They're building new stations in town. So, people may feel like it's a lot of money, but it costs a lot for public safety services. And those funds are not available for us to use for other things. So we're well served on the fire side, but falling a bit short on things like the streets and the roads and the infrastructures, as Jonathan mentioned.
Yeah, because I would assume that property tax would have been probably the primary source of revenue for the city, because it doesn't have booming industry.
Yeah, it's usually one of the largest. In some communities, let's say Santa Barbara, where they have so much tourism, then property taxes won't be the top.
Right.
But in a community like Santa Paula, property tax is usually going to be your largest source of income, followed closely by sales tax. Those are usually, 1 and 2 neck and neck. The challenge with sales tax versus property tax is sales tax also ebbs and flows a little bit with the economy. So, for example, back in 2010, or when COVID first hit, right, you could see a real downturn in sales tax. So that's something for us to be cautious about, concerned with.
And I know too that a lot of residents are thinking, okay, we're going to increase our sales tax by 1%. We're going to put this extra burden on the residents, but in reality, the burden is being shared because it's anyone who shops here.
Correct.
So it's and we do get a lot of people who come in from outside of Santa Paula to do business and whatnot.
A lot of
within
it's
Santa Paula.
actually our gas stations along the highway. It's one of our significant contributors. We also get a lot of sales tax from manufacturing. And so there's companies in town that are producing goods that are being sold outside of Santa Paula, like your ARP or Benpack, or even Santa Paula Materials right off the freeway that sells rock and gravel and sand and dirt. And you wouldn't think much about it. Those sales aren't to people in Santa Paula. Those are to big contractors. But we get a sales tax from that. And so,
what about magic shops? Do you get much from
magic shops are a little lower on the list.
It trickles in once in a while.
Yeah.
Trickles.
Yeah.
And then it just disappears.
Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
It's kind of like our slab leak. It's
There you
trickling.
go. Yeah. But a misconception is that they're thinking everything is taxed.
Yeah, that's a great point that you bring up, and it's not.
And you've done a great job explaining in some of the meetings I've attended on the difference of what items are taxed and what aren't taxed.
Yeah.
And
So
go ahead.
typically, your groceries are not taxed for the most part. Sales of like alcohol and liquor and those types of things are taxed, but your major purchases, healthcare, insurance costs, housing, those aren't taxed. And then you have items, your clothing and some of your larger purchases. But to really put things into perspective, and I obviously want to be sensitive because it still is a burden, right? It's an increased cost to people. But just to give you an example, John, if you go out to buy some food, a $10 purchase of a takeout or at a restaurant, you're going to pay 1% on that, which is really what 10 cents would be the difference now in the increase. So I think an argument could be made that people spend every day on Starbucks and other types of purchases, ancillary like purchases, going to restaurants and all that. That 10 cents, the great news about that is that 10 cents goes straight to Santa Paula. It doesn't get shared with the county, it doesn't get shared with the state. That 10 cents comes straight to Santa Paula.
And that's similar to Measure T, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same.
And it has to be used here.
Yep.
Even if the council felt compelled, they can't make a donation to the state of California for some good cause.
Although they like that, right? The state would like that.
The state would like that, right? They have no trouble asking us to increase costs for laws that they pass.
Yeah.
A recent example is we are being forced to convert all of our ball fields to LED lighting.
Yes.
That's great for, greenhouse gas emission reduction and, lowered energy consumption, and it'll save costs for us on a, ongoing basis. But the quote that we have to change out all of our ball field lighting is $1.3 million. The state's not giving us money to do it. They're just telling us we have to.
Yeah.
And they're not even saying at such time as you go to replace them, you have to use new technology. They're saying by, the year 2025, you have to do this.
Yeah.
Where do we get that money?
Yeah.
Exactly. That's local dollars that we have to spend.
They don't even provide you a break on the lighting, do they?
Right. No, we have a statewide contract and you're going to get the bulbs really cheap.
They could give the free lighting. You just have to pay for the installation.
That would be great.
Yeah.
We would take any handout.
So explain online sales. How does that work with online sales?
Yeah. So the beauty of the Measure T monies and the Measure R is that it's not just a sales tax, it's what's called a sales and use tax. So if you shop in Santa Paula, you go to get some clothing or a household item here, you go over to Miners Hardware or Santa Paula Trading, for example. They're what we call a brick and mortar shop. And they apply the local sales tax, 8.25%, and 1 cent of that automatically goes to the city. If you do online shopping, then those monies are taxed, but then they're distributed and shared in a county-wide pool, and also some of it attributed directly to us. So, for example, our regular sales tax, which is only taxing businesses here in town, generates about $3.5 million for us in current terms. Our measure T is also 1 cent. So it's the same amount, same percentage. The customer is paying the same percentage, but we get closer to 4.5 million because it's taxing those online sales.
Yeah.
So if you shop at Amazon, well, for example, if I drive into Oxnard and go to Home Depot and buy stuff at Home Depot, Oxnard gets that sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
If I purchase something online and have it delivered to my house from Home Depot, Santa Paula gets that sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
But here's another catch. If I buy something from Home Depot that I've ordered online, and then the option is to go pick it up. So maybe it's a really, like I bought a greenhouse for my backyard. If I order it and it's delivered to the Oxnard Home Depot and I go to pick it up, we get that sales tax. Oxnard doesn't, because it's considered an online sale, even though I'm picking it up in Oxnard. So it's an interesting difference. We didn't make those laws.
The only exception right now that's being deliberated at the state level is Amazon
with the fulfillment centers.
Right.
Yeah.
So with those fulfillment centers and many cities are all pushing back on that.
Yeah, they have that one in Oxnard,
that they need to be able to share those revenues, but that's still to be determined.
Yeah.
So
So let's break this down. For every dollar that is earned in property tax, how much of that goes to the city? Because they don't get 100% of it.
Right.
Even though 80% of that's getting taken, it's not 80 cents going to the county and 20 cents going to Santa Paula. The percentage is less than that because the state's taking their piece.
So for every dollar that somebody pays in town for property tax, we get 4 cents.
4 cents.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
and the county is getting.
I don't know that number off the top of my head. Schools get a large bulk of it. The state gets a large bulk. The county gets a large bulk. Cities get a lesser bulk. Ours would have been 20 cents on the dollar, which is sufficient.
Okay.
But it was reduced to the 4 cents because the remaining 16
so
cents
16 cents is going to fire.
Correct.
Okay. So so we would have normally gotten 20 cents on that. Right. We're getting 4. For sales tax, what do we get for every dollar spent in Santa Paula?
So if you want to just break it down, you have 6.25% goes to county and state agencies. Period. Right off the top. So that represents 75% of your sales tax. When you go to pay and you see that little line at the bottom, 8.25%, just take 75% of that almost, and just that goes to other people. Between Santa Paula, as Dan had mentioned, the 1% that all cities typically get, which is roughly about $3.5 million, and then the 1% we have in Measure T, we get that remaining 2% left. Okay. That's it. So by it, those monies come to us. Measure R, if it were to pass forward, we would now have that 3% would all come to Santa Paula. So we're taking another piece of the pie that the state and the county can't get their hands on.
Right.
And we would be able to utilize that directly here in perpetuity.
And how else does the city make money?
That's a great question. So we get asked that a lot, as we've been talking about Measure R. So what else, the city, you're asking the taxpayers to fund this and to help with these initiatives. But gosh, I got to say, for at least the last 4 years or so, we really made a robust effort to engage our legislators at both the federal level, the state level, and then really work hard on our grants process. And in the course of these last 4 years, we've really been able to work closely with Congresswoman Brownlee, being able to securing federal funding for the Harvard Boulevard project, $2 million, almost $1 million in funding for the Mesa Tanks project. These are all funds that were not originally allocated or budgeted for. We actually had to go out and work with our legislators. We were able to get $1 million for the sports park from Senator Lamone and Assemblymember Bennett. And then numerous grants, of which you're going to start hearing some more community engagement around. Most notably the Bike Trail Extension Project, where we received about $1.5 million from the Ventura County Transportation Commission.
Those are all kind of ancillary to our regular, operating budget. And so I think to respond to your question, on an ongoing basis, the other primary sources of our revenues come from vehicle license fees. As you mentioned, property tax and sales tax, development activity. So when people come to take out a permit, maybe it's just to change out their water heater or put on a new roof, or maybe it's to add on to their house or build a new house or larger development. And then we also have money that comes into our general fund out of our enterprise accounts. So our water and sewer are self-funded, but they also have to pay into the general fund for some basic services, payroll, legal support, items that go to the city council, liability insurance, all of those things. So we get some money back into the general fund from those enterprises.
And then everything Jonathan was talking about, it might be a one and done.
Yeah.
And so, so you got your core revenue stream coming in from these various things. And then to supplement that, you're constantly trying to go out and get some Congress people to help raise some money and doing the grants. And so,
so how much is Measure R potentially? What could dollar-wise, what could that bring into the city?
We'd probably be looking at $4 to $4.2 million annually, and it would theoretically go up as either prices go up or as more people make purchases, especially as the city continues to grow. What our city engineer has determined is that we need at least $2 million a year to be able to accelerate our street program. That's $2 million more than what we've been spending. And so at least half of that money, if Measure R were to succeed, I think the council would put right into streets. But in addition to that, as Jonathan was saying earlier, we have a lot of sidewalk issues and problems, lighting issues, sinkholes and storm drain issues. We have signals that are at our intersections that are quite old. So there's a lot that we could spend money on that would really improve Santa Paula in our look, our safety, our feel, our operations, and in turn would kind of reduce some of our liabilities.
so at what point does I know a lot of people's fears are, okay, we approve this tax and then it's just going to be another tax we live with for the rest of our life. Is there an end game to this thing, or is the plan to keep that active for a period, or will it ever go away?
Well, the measure can be repealed by the voters, or a future city council could place it on the ballot to repeal it. And then Measure T also expires in 2036. So still about 12 years from now, but there's a question about, how long that lasts.
Right.
Well, that does have a sunset.
Okay. And so if the citizens decide that they're done with Measure R, they can put it on the ballot and basically vote it down.
Yeah. Let's say, for example, that there's either economic health of the city that's realized in some other way, or maybe there's some new funding mechanism that supports city operations. Then, the need for Measure R might diminish. It's hard to predict. The cost of doing business tends to just go up. So the need for revenues does as well. But the outlook for the city is still, I think, very positive. We have a lot of growth going on the east end of town, and eventually some additional shopping opportunities, which people desperately need here.
Right.
And so it could be foreseeable that in 10, 12 years, as Measure T starts to wind down, that the city council at that time and the community would feel that it doesn't need to be renewed. That if Measure R passes, that we just stick with Measure R because maybe we've seen growth from a new shopping center and new homes.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it sounds too like you want the growth to take place in retail because that's where it's going to have the biggest impact. Because the property is not going to.
Property doesn't pay for itself.
Yeah.
I mean, a home purchased for $600,000 would only bring in $240 per year.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
we pay our
Now
city
they
attorney
spent
for 1 hour is $240. So, like,
Wow.
you know,
attorney fees. There you
Yeah.
go.
you know, that's probably an unfair comparison, but the point is that development by itself doesn't really pay for itself.
Well, you know, and I wanted to add to that point, you know, one of the pieces of educational material that we're sharing with the community, and you're more than welcome to look at it on our website. You know, Dan was sharing, well, you know, what happens if Measure T disappears in 2036? We have a chart out there that shows where the general fund revenues are for the city per capita. And we're at towards the bottom of the list. And that's including Measure T. If Measure T were to be pulled out, some people ask, you know, well, you know, why doesn't the city have the funding to make all these repairs, to take care of our streets, and to, you know, move the plan from 15 years to the city's trying its best right now to improve the roads with the amount of funding that we have available. If Measure T were just hypothetically to disappear, that would put us at the very bottom of the list in revenue per capita. And so as the harvest expands and more people come to town, that's going to add more people, which is going to even further decrease the revenue per capita. And quite frankly, I mean, as we can all see, I think when we drive around, you know, the city is looking for additional mechanisms and funding to help, you know, take care of these infrastructure projects.
Yeah, and a lot of our infrastructure is getting old,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been there,
Or is already
or
old.
is old.
Yes.
It's been there since I was a kid. You know,
Yeah.
same thing. So and as we continue to grow, there is a need to continue to build that, change out that infrastructure.
Yeah.
So you guys do a good job considering the funds you guys do have. So with it, so
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Where can you find the information?
Yeah, so if you actually go to www.spcity.org, and right there on the homepage, if you scroll to the bottom, there's a section that shows the Measure R logo, and you can click on that, and all the materials and data that's available regarding this.
Is there any other community outreach that's going to be done?
Yeah. We'll send out materials. There's a bill stuffer going in
And the
people's
next
water bills
Mhm.
in this next month, and some mailers to talk about the measure.
Yep.
But as you know, as James was saying, we can't advocate for it.
Mhm.
I believe that there's an independent effort underway to promote the measure.
Yeah.
There's the Ventura County Taxpayers Association has a ballot argument against the measure. That'll be in voter pamphlets. So we'll let those sides kind of hash it out. You know, from my perspective, because I live here in town, I care deeply about our town and our future. This is just about like self-determination.
Mhm.
And I'm not here to tell people how they should vote. This is about Santa Paulans deciding what they want for themselves.
Correct.
And what they want for their community. And if the decision is we're not willing to tax ourselves, then we're going to still provide services, and we're going to do our best with what we have. And we'll continue to look for other creative ways and go to our legislators. And
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think it's also really important just to note, how did we get here today? How did we get to putting Measure R on the ballot for the voters to consider? Right. And so we went through a robust exercise where we did a community survey, and we had over 2,000 survey responses trying to understand what are the priorities of residents in Santa Paula. And they really clearly spoke forward in identifying several key categories, one of which is, you know, being our streets and roads, and, you know, retaining local businesses, and, you know, maintaining clean drinking water for residents. So
911 services.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's a question of how fast you want it done,
Right.
basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there will be an in-person opportunity for the community. The Chamber's partnering with the League of Women Voters. We have a candidates forum on October 8th. We're going to have a little discussion on Measure R, the pros and the yeses and nos for it.
Yep.
So along with our candidates,
great.
other candidates and school board trustees also,
And will that be streamed?
that will be streamed.
Oh,
So I'm looking for
Yeah,
a
who's
person that
doing
can
that?
stream it. Yeah.
Yeah.
no, you're not.
Yeah.
That deal's been done.
No, good video. I know a good videographer.
So it'll be October 8th at the community center, starting at 6:30. So
Oh, great.
there's information on the chamber website right now on the calendar section, and we'll share it with the city also to post that as well.
Good.
Will Dr. Pepper be taxed?
Yes.
I think it is.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And a CRV with that too, so you get double.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk.
Yeah.
That just put a serious deficit in my budget.
Yeah.
Well, you might have the governor's private number. You can give it to him.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Argue that.
Yeah.
Treat soda as a grocery. Get it off of the list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Good. I
So
appreciate you having us.
yeah, and I got to say that I've dealt with several cities for a variety of different reasons, business wise and whatnot. And Santa Paula has been one of the kindest cities that I've ever worked with when it comes to trying to get something done. And I think it speaks highly of, the people that are running the city. And it's like we interviewed the chief, and his whole thing about is we're here to help the community, and the whole attitude is about we're here to serve, we're here to help.
Yeah.
And I think you guys should be commended for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I had an award, I would give it to you, but I don't.
It's
So-
the beauty of being in a smaller town that
Mm.
cares about its people and actually wants to connect.
Yeah.
And it's such a friendly and welcoming place that I think we just try and mirror that, even with our police services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we interviewed the building and safety, and Dan was like, it's not about saying no, it's
Mhm.
about
How to
saying
get to
yes,
yes.
and then figuring
Yeah.
out how we get there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So anything on the calendar?
I spoke about the candidates forum. We do have a business roundtable on the 26th, correct, Jonathan? Business
Yes.
Roundtable. That's at the Glen Tavern. It's at 9:00. It's our September
Mhm.
roundtable, and we're still the agenda is still in the works right now.
Yeah,
Do you have
well-
anybody particular for the cities? That's
Yeah, we'll have an update on the wayfinding process that's taking
Okay.
place right now.
Mhm.
We're also going to provide an educational information session on Measure R.
Mhm.
And then we'll obviously hear from the Chamber of
Yeah,
Commerce.
We'll
And
have a few updates. too.
yeah, we'll have a
So-
few other economic development updates.
And then the last cruise night.
and the last cruise
Mm.
night.
Coming up in
Right.
October.
Or
Yeah.
last October cruise night too. Plus, we do have the Taste of Santa Paula coming up on October
Mhm.
3rd. So tickets are available. You can go to the Chamber website. There's
Mhm.
a link there to buy tickets.
Santa Paula Beautiful
Santa
is coming
Paula
up.
Beautiful is coming up. There's a compost giveaway also on the same day. Athens. There's a lot
Yeah,
happening. Just go to the Chamber website. Everything's there for the month.
And we don't have a commercial yet, but Athens gave a grant to Listen Up Santa Paula so that we could take the show on the road.
Oh, that's
So our
great.
goal is that we're going to start going to different. This was part of the grant.
Oh, nice.
Right?
So that we can go mobile, and we're gonna start doing some remotes at businesses and
Yeah.
start to help promote them and things like that. So,
Perfect work.
big shout out to Athens.
That's
Yeah.
great.
They've been a good partner.
Yeah, great people there too. Yeah. Anything else?
No, we're good.
The other thing I'd like to say is, when the city does the council meetings and it's streamed, it's such a great job. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really been helpful for me to be able to watch it online and
Yeah.
not have to attend the meetings and stuff. So whoever's doing
Pass
that,
along compliments to
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
videographer,
be
but
sure
yeah.
to thank them for me.
Yeah,
'cause,
absolutely.
Mine keeps going out, so I,
I
don't
think-
know. What's
Yeah, I know.
going
You
on,
keep
He works
getting
for the
Ohio.
House of Magic Foundation, right?
They pulled him out of a hat.
Yeah, really.
That was a good one.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't think we can
Okay.
end on any better note than
No,
that.
on that one, I think we're out.
We're done.
So thanks guys for coming on, and it's always an open forum. So
Thanks
anytime you
for
want
having
to
us.
come in and shout, my mom would love to hear from you. So
Great.
she's our listener.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
So anything else, John?
Good.
All right. Till next week. Stay safe, and it's finally cooling down. So enjoy the weather.
This has been a Rough Edge Studios production.
I just.